Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Tuesday afternoon. On the show today, get into some basketball talk. Texas versus a rival tonight in basketball. Women's basketball against that same rival tomorrow night, so we'll get more into those games. A lot of news happening in the NBA. A coach with the second best record in the East was fired today, and they haven't even talked to the guy that they think they want to replace him. We'll get into all the NBA talk as well. Some NFL hirings happening. Another big name could be close to being hired as well. We'll get into all of that, plus a whole lot more, including your text messages. 512-447-3776 is the text line. 512-447-3776 is the text line number. If you guys want to join the show, you guys drive it. I just try to keep it on the rails. And what that means is whatever you guys want to talk about, we try to get to everybody's text here on the show. Talk about your questions. Talk about what you want to go into, your hot takes, anything you got. Send those in on the text line. Plus, we'll do the big fat poll of the day. But all day long, whatever you guys want to talk about, send that in on the text line. And we try to get to everyone's text here on the Sports Complex. Little bit of Texas news to clean up, and I meant to do this before the show, and I just looked down at the sheet of paper, and I've realized I did not do what I needed to do before the show. There were some other things going on, and maybe I didn't have enough time to do prep, but I should have looked this up. I meant to look this up. Texas gets another commitment, and I can't pronounce his name. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm going to go with Teoli Savia. I'm going to go with that. It's a defensive lineman, 6'4", 305. He is a three-star commit from Las Vegas. He is a senior transfer from Arizona, had played under Johnny Nansen there at Arizona, but helping give some more depth at that defensive line. He may not be a star player that you're going to be trying to get in there, but another guy that fits in with what Johnny Nansen is going to want to do with those defensive linemen. You know, he's a linebacker coach for Texas, but he did work with the defense. He worked with everybody, clearly, because he was the defensive coordinator at Arizona. He is the co-DC at Texas. So that is your commitment today from Texas in the transfer portal. And, we'll see if anybody else from Arizona gets in that transfer portal and comes over. I've not heard a lot of movement on that, but we're also there could be a hiring in the NFL today or tomorrow that would open up another transfer portal opening for Texas. There is also a little bit of news in the NFL we'll get to in the 5 o'clock hour, but it may explain more of why Texas does not have a defensive line coach yet. Some interesting movement from the Texans that may explain that, but we'll get into that in the 5 o'clock hour. But the Longhorns still do not have a defensive line coach right now, so to speak of. So that is a problem or the issue of why Texas may not be getting more defensive line recruits right now in transfers. We're also getting let's get into some college basketball talk because Texas is playing Oklahoma tonight. And that's where we'll get to the big fat poll. Will be about OU because, we get Texas men's versus OU tonight. We get Texas women's against OU tomorrow night. To recap a little bit of last night first to clean up the business from last night. In the Big 12, Cincinnati went to number 7 Kansas. Kansas has had some struggles as of late. They have lost to a couple of the teams Texas lost to in UCF in West Virginia. So Kansas trying to turn it around, does get to a win against Cincinnati. It was a close game throughout the entire game, and we've seen Kansas maybe going to their freshman, Johnny Furphy. It's not a great basketball name. Johnny Furphy is the guy they may be going to more. He ends up being the star of the game, hitting a big three late to clinch the game for Kansas, put it up to a 10-point lead where Cincy's not able to get back into it enough. But Johnny Furphy, he's a 6'9" freshman guard from Australia. He put up 23 and 11 last night, went 7 for 8 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3. Just played a really big game for Kansas. And if that's a guy that you're able to pull up and he becomes a star player for Kansas this year, to have that size and that ability with the handles and the shot could be big for Kansas, as they've had some problems with Hunter Dickinson and some of the other players just not being able to step up to the plate so far this season, and shooting hasn't been there. The defense is okay, but it hasn't been fully what it needs to be. So you don't necessarily want to have to rely on a freshman that wasn't necessarily the top recruit coming in. But Johnny Furphy had a huge game, and if he can continue to grow in this Kansas offense, That'll be someone to look out for. And believe me, he looks all of a freshman. He's 6'9", so he's big, but a very baby-faced kid from Australia in Johnny Furphy. That's a name you should know in Big 12 basketball. Texas does take on Oklahoma tonight. This is a game for Texas that is a real big game. You know, you get the win over Baylor, which is a number 9 Baylor. You're playing number 11 Oklahoma now. Gives you a little bit more of a chance to solidify that maybe the rocky start to the beginning of Big 12 was not indicative of where this team can go. So you get a huge opportunity to that night tonight against a rival. But it is a road game against a really good team and a very, very good defensive team in Oklahoma. They have some guards that are going to give Texas some problems that are just a little bit bigger than Texas guards, where Tyrese Hunter is probably around 6 foot and Max Abmas not much bigger than that. So if we put that in, and IT Horton is not a huge guy either, that the guard play for Oklahoma, they'll be able to get into them, put hands up, and cause some problems on the three-point line. And that's where Texas is going to have to be able to start getting inside. You're going to have to be able to space. You're going to be able to have to move without the ball. Dylan Disu early, if he can stay out of foul trouble and get inside and get some points inside to help open up, make them help off of those outside guys to give Max Abmas and Tyrese Hunter a little bit better of a shot, will be big. If Dylan Mitchell is going to be able to not be somebody that has played so far off of that they can just keep helping off Dylan Mitchell, I think you're going to see Dylan Mitchell kind of be sent away from some of the spots where Dylan Disu is tonight, where you send him to the other side of the court. So if they're trying to help off him, you can get the ball around and move the ball around and, you know, make the defense switch over to help and use their instincts against them to try and get some big baskets for Texas tonight. But it's going to be an uphill battle for Texas. Javion McMullen is your high scorer for Oklahoma, 15 points per game for him. They kind of spread the ball around pretty well offensively. There's no one on this team that I think is going to kill you. They have a couple of three-point shooters you're going to have to watch out for. Texas can play good enough three-point defense. I know against Baylor they definitely did in the first half. But this is a game, in a rivalry game for Rodney Terry, where, you know, you understand what it means. You understand, you know, the flack you're getting right now that you're a first 4 team out in the brackets, and, you know, you haven't gotten the wins. And even though you get a big win at home, you have not been able to win on the road, losing a game to West Virginia that you really should not have lost. You beat a Cincinnati team that's better than people thought they were, but you're going to have to be able to compete. And going against this Oklahoma team, so per example, defense is going to be tough. Can you score against one of the more elite defenses in college basketball? Texas' shooting percentage is pretty through the roof right now. They're a top shooting team in college basketball, but is that a benefit of the preseason schedule? Is that a benefit of some lopsided wins early in the season, or is it what you can continue in Big 12 play? We know they continued it in the first half of last night. Can you keep your energy up? You know, we've talked about the strength and conditioning a bit too for this Texas team, if they're going to be able to keep that up. But look for them tonight. And a big thing you're going to have to watch out for, this is a team in Oklahoma that gets to the free throw line and they hit their free throws. So they're going to be coming right at Dylan Disu and trying to get him in foul trouble, because they know if they get him off the court, that is a huge help for any of these teams. And it's going to be a common thread you'll see for the rest of the season in the Big 12 is let's go straight at Dylan Disu and try and bump him and see if we can get him to pick up one of those silly fouls. Let's, you know, bounce around. And if we get him on the help, pump fake, get him to get in the air and jump underneath him and get that foul that everyone hates watching, but it's a foul, so you have to call it. Those types of plays are what you're going to be watching for early in the game. As, you know, if Dylan Disu can stay out of foul trouble, Texas has a really good shot in this game. If they get him into foul trouble early, it's going to rely more on Max Abmas coming out and having a huge game. Tyrese Hunter stepping up on the road, which has not been his forte. He's been a much better player at home than he's ever been on the road, so that'll be something that he'll have to work on, continue to work on. Dylan Mitchell, can he create and get points off the dribble and get to the basket when guys are spreading the court a little bit more? And if they play off of him, can he use athleticism to get a head start downhill and get some big plays? And what does Shedrick do off the bench? If Shedrick can play the minutes and, you know, play 15 to 20, a really solid minutes, getting some moves in the post. I just think against this Oklahoma team, the guard play for this Oklahoma team and guard defense has been really good. And relying on Max Abmas to bail you out in this game may not be the best way to go against an Oklahoma team at Oklahoma. But we'll see. Dylan Disu can stay out of foul trouble. This Texas team has a shot tonight against number 11 Oklahoma. And I know nobody wants to hear a shot against Oklahoma. They have turned things around pretty quickly there. You can do that with the transfer portal now. And they're playing really good basketball right now. Also on the docket tonight, number 4 Houston at number 21 BYU. We should be a fun matchup. Houston held UCF to insane lows on the offensive end last game. They only hit 3 shots within the 3-point arc, 3 layups. They were all in the second half. They hit 7 shots in total in that game. 7. Scored the rest of their points at the free throw line. But Houston just played them tough the entire game. But BYU has one of the best offenses, not only in the Big 12, but in college basketball. Can this BYU offense continue to score against Houston? They say defense travels. We'll see if it travels tonight. Houston versus BYU tonight in college basketball. Remember, the text line is open, 512-447-3776. Moving over to the NBA, we'll clean up some stuff from last night before we get into the big news of a big trade and a big firing in the NBA. Spurs lose to the 76ers 133-123. It was fun matchup, though, to watch Wemby versus Embiid. Embiid won, by the way. Embiid won that matchup hands down. Wemby got into foul trouble. Embiid just knew how to kind of get him in those positions. But a great learning experience for a young man to go up against the reigning MVP, who's playing like an MVP again this season. Really good learning experience for Wemby on how to play that type of defense, how to go in against a guy that's bigger than you and stronger than you, but not taller than you. No one's really going to be taller than Wemby. Use your length. Don't get caught up in the air. You know, if you're 7'3", you don't necessarily need to jump on everything because you're going to be able to, affect shots even if you're flat-footed. But he does still put up 33 and 7 in the game in 28 minutes to play. He does get in foul trouble, which limited the amount of he could play, and he's on a minutes restriction. So 28 minutes is kind of the max he was going to play anyway. But he got to get pulled out in some crucial moments. 76ers are able to pull away, but Embiid goes crazy, 70 and 18 in 37 minutes for Joel Embiid, putting up 70 points there. You know, he just started going early. He really wanted to, he said, give me the ball against the young man. And he wanted to make a point to go after Wemby, and he sure did. And when Zach Collins came in to try and spell him, it did not go any better. They didn't really have any answer for him, and so they just kept feeding the rock to Embiid all game long, and he puts up 70 against the Spurs in a loss there. The Celtics do take out the Mavs as well, 119-110, and this was really Tatum versus Doncic, and Doncic just didn't get the help around him. Tatum goes for 39 and 11, Doncic 33 and 18, and I mean both shot a lot of free throws, 19 free throws. Jason Tatum shoots in that game. They're going downhill. But since Doncic has returned to the lineup, we saw Irving playing really well without him, and I'm not sure they've quite merged back into it. I have to find a way to get Irving more involved in this lineup. You know, I know it's difficult. Doncic is a very ball-heavy guy, and he wants to be the guy on the field, on the court. But, you know, it's been an issue for Doncic his entire career. Can you win with one guy being the main guy? You know, you really like to see Kyrie Irving get the ball a little bit more in these games and have him, you know, let Doncic get a little bit of rest away from the ball, but still be a threat to hit some shots. That's something that they're going to have to continue to work on as the season goes on. Tonight, you're going to see Knicks at Nets and Lakers at Clippers. If you like seeing inner city rivalries, both games tonight on TNT, so fun stuff there to check out. Big news, though, from the NBA. The first one you got to see is Terry Rozier traded to Miami for Kyle Lowry and a protected first-round pick. Depending on the protection on this first-round pick, a great trade for Miami. I think it's a pretty good trade, even if it's not that protected. But getting Terry Rozier, he's a really good player. He's been on not the best team. You know, those types of players, when you get them on trades, they're, you know, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to figure out where they fit in. And sometimes, you know, they've been putting up big numbers somewhere, but not somewhere else. But the Miami Heat have an ability to get guys into a system, use them to the fullest of their abilities, no matter where they came from, no matter what the situation before. They do tend to use them to the best of their abilities. So there may be a little bit of a warming period for this Miami team, because you know Rozier, it's just going to take a little bit for him to get used to how the Heat play basketball, how much the effort they're going to want from him on the defensive end, the question of where he's going to fit in the lineup with the Tyler Hero coming off the bench and then Jimmy Butler, and are you playing him more at the 1 or the 2, and how do you want to use him at the guard? How much time does he actually get with the ball in his hands versus playing off ball? All going to be things that he's going to have to adapt to that he didn't necessarily have to adapt to in Charlotte because, well, in Charlotte too, it's when LaMelo Ball's playing, it's going to be in LaMelo's hands, and Rozier's going to get it second. But I really like the trade. It's one of those trades. You're giving up a Kyle Lowry who you weren't really using. He's just his best days are behind him, and so you're able to get somebody good in there that, you know, just for not that much, for basically a first-round pick, and you got to dump Kyle Lowry's salary, you're able to go out and get a player who at times has looked extremely dynamic, looks to be a real high-level scorer at a lot of points, and if you can get his defense up a little bit higher, use his athleticism in those ways, then this is a huge trade for Miami to bring in some help after they whiff on Dame Lillard, after they're not able to get Pascal Siakam, and it feels like you're just kind of missing on a lot of these trades. To go out and get the job done to bring in a Terry Rozier is a great trade for Miami. I'm a big fan of it. I definitely think they've won the trade, and it's really just bringing in a guy that you feel is underperformed in a market where he just, you know, that Charlotte team's just been really bad for a long time, and I think Charlotte too, they're looking like they're basically with new ownership now in the realm of a rebuild. And I know nobody ever wants to say the word rebuild in sports now because fan bases hate it. But, you know, and especially when you're already bad, when they're like, well, we want to rebuild. It's like, from what? It's already broken. It's just a build. There's no if you're Charlotte. It's no rebuild. It's just a build. They re-signed LaMelo, which you're going to re-sign. You can end up trading him if you want or not. But, you know, Gordon Hayward, they could probably try and ditch his salary as well if someone else wants to go pick up Gordon Hayward. You have Miles Bridges, which is a question because of his off-the-court things, but is definitely a good player on that team. You know, there's some other pieces you can put on that Charlotte team that they may be making some more moves. They want to acquire picks, and teams have picks to give up for a good player, especially once we get into February, and teams are really starting to panic that none of the guys they wanted to get through. Charlotte could be a big name to ditch some more people and just give their young guys some more playing time and say, hey, maybe we're moving on. Mitch Kupchak is, I believe, in his 70s now. They may be moving on from him. He's been the general manager for a while. May try and bring in a new name over the offseason to start heading up we don't say rebuild, the build of the Charlotte Hornets. But I'm grading this an A right now for Miami. We'll see how it ends up working out, but I'm a fan of the Rozier trade to Miami. Also, big news out of the NBA. Adrian Griffin gets fired from the Bucks today. Somewhat out of left field, somewhat not out of left field. People that are covering the Bucks, people that have watched a lot more Bucks than I have. I've not watched a ton of them. I've watched a few of their games this season. I guess people closer to the team feel this was somewhat inevitable, that at some point this was going to happen. I don't know if they thought it was going to happen in season. But to fire a coach who is 30-13, his first head coaching gig, 30-13 so far. They're the first in offense in NBA. They're second in points per game in NBA, and apparently that's not enough. But a lot of people were saying that basically Adrian Griffin was the hire before they made the trade for Damian Lillard, and once they made that trade, they were never really sold on using a first-year head coach. They wanted to bring in somebody with more experience to try and get this team right to where they need to be this year. That the Adrian Griffin hire was more of a let's build this thing together and get back to where we want to be. I guess they found out that Giannis was not on the same clock that they were, so they make the trade for Dame Lillard, and it meant the end of time that unless Adrian Griffin automatically day one knew how to be a veteran coach, which is very difficult to do, the writing was on the wall from day one. The name right now that everyone is mentioning for the Bucks is Doc Rivers. That they haven't even reached out to him yet, apparently. So and I guess, you have to say that whether it's true or not, but all reports are that Doc Rivers, if he wants the job, would be the leading candidate to take over the Milwaukee Bucks with Dame Lillard, with Giannis, and this is going to be the question, is if they do get a veteran coach in, will Giannis finally be happy? He did not seem to be happy with Coach Bud. That he wasn't happy that he wasn't the guy that was getting every play when they were going down. He wasn't happy that, they didn't necessarily have the help, and he wanted to bring in somebody else. They go get Dame. He clearly wasn't happy with Adrian Griffin, who was a friend of his, but he wasn't happy with him being the coach. So this is starting to build a narrative for Giannis that he could start being somebody who wants to have more say in everything that's done, and he wants his guys, and he wants to work with the best. And if you're not bringing me the best to win a title every year, I don't come here to not win. And I think we're going to see that with some of the more, foreign players where they just don't necessarily have the mindset of, you're not going to win a title every year. Their mindset is, I want to win the title every year, and if we're not doing everything we can, it's clearly not my fault, so everyone else has to go and we'll start over, which you can't do. Sometimes you just got to take it, and especially if you're a small market team like Milwaukee. But when you have Dame Lillard and you have Giannis, there's going to be people out there looking for that job and people willing to take it. It'll be interesting to see if Doc Rivers wants to take that job for Milwaukee. But right now, Adrian Griffin, 30-13 as a head coach, not good enough. Second in the East to a Celtics team that is playing out of this world. Not good enough. There was reports that Giannis was drawing plays up on the sideline on a sheet of paper yesterday, and that was the end of it for Adrian Griffin. That if Giannis is having to draw up plays now, then no good. You got to go get a real coach who knows what he's doing. Even though Doc Rivers I watched an interview with him where Rondo used to draw up plays for him. So I don't know. We'll see. This is, Milwaukee has been over backwards for Giannis so far. And they've got a title, and as long as he stays there, that continues to make them a top team. I get it. I'm not sold on firing a coach, 30-13 coach, without already having your guy in line. Because if Doc Rivers turns it down, where do you start to go with this coaching search? Where's the guy that you say is this super veteran that's going to be able to come in and immediately win you a title? You call him Phil Jackson. So if they hire Doc Rivers, I get it. He's had issues clearly in Philadelphia. He wasn't able to get him over the hump. I don't know if I'm going to say he's the great coach that wins everything. Again, I'll say he had Rondo drawing up plays for him in Boston when he won the title. So I don't know if he's the be-all, end-all, but that's apparently who they're looking at in Milwaukee. All right. Before we get the break, let's do a big fat poll of the day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
Text line's open, 512-447-3776, 512-447-3776. And since Texas versus OU is twice this week, I thought I'd ask you, and we can get some of these out if you want to throw them in there. What's your best OU joke? What's your best Sooner joke? Since we got Texas OU tonight at 6, we have Texas versus OU tomorrow night, women's basketball as well. We're getting a double shot at Texas OU this week. What's your best Sooner joke? We got to make some OU jokes, right? It's not just for football. We can make them for basketball, so send those in on the text line, 512-447-3776. If you got any takes on the Bucks firing their coach, the Terry Rozier trade, anything else you want to put in there, or the big game tonight against Oklahoma, you can put that in. Also, MLB Hall of Fame, the announcement should be coming, I believe, at 5 o'clock today, so we'll keep you updated with that, of who may get into the Baseball Hall of Fame. For Astros fan, Billy Wagner is on that ballot. We'll see if he gets in as well. We'll reset everything at 5 o'clock, and a lot of NFL news happening. Some more could be happening during the show. We'll see. 512-447-3776 is the text line, though. What's your best OU joke? Anything else you want to talk about, send it in on the text line until we get back on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn on a Tuesday afternoon. Lots of news happening in the NBA. College basketball, big game tonight against the Sooners. We're asking you on the big fat poll of the day, 512-447-3776. What is your favorite Sooner joke? Send that one in over there. Also, we are getting into some NFL talk, some more NBA talk, more baseball talk today, too. The Hall of Fame should be announced at 5 o'clock today. That's what I've been told. So we will see if we can get into that and get some good baseball. See if they let anybody on the Hall of Fame, the worst Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame. I know that's a hot take on that one. I think they're way too judgy in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm much more a fan of letting more people in. I know some people aren't, but I think you can rank them in the Hall of Fame and have it different. But to just pretend that only certain people, like they to have super judgmental and people that should be Hall of Famers not getting in, and then the whole steroid thing is going to be a problem when there was other guys that cheated before that and they got in, but it was a different type of cheating. You don't know how much cheating was done, and history is going to tell a weird world of it. I'm not a huge fan of how it's done. I think the NFL is probably the best, and I like the NFL. I like the NBA's more than MLB's just because it is just such a skewed, weird way of how baseball is viewed by some of these writers. But that's just my opinion, and baseball does not care, so they're going to do it their way. Let's talk a little bit of NFL with Hook 'em Up with Ian Robbie. Text line's rolling right now. Keep sending in those jokes. We're going to get to those in just a minute, but I want to play you some sound from Hook 'em Up and Ian Robbie this morning. Talking, Rod had some good notes about the NFL and some new hirings. We'll get into it when we talk about it at 5 with you guys on the text line, but I just want to give you a little talk here from a Hook 'em Up replay here on the Sports Complex.
All right, now I wanted to get into a few NFL topics. I saw the Brian Callahan story that he is expected to get the head coaching job with the Tennessee Titans. And it got me thinking about some research that I did not too long ago about the NFL because for those who don't know, if you go look at the NFL, you go look at a lot of the teams, a lot of the coaching hires recently. A lot of them are related to former coaches. A lot of them are sons, or former coaches, grandsons of former coaches, and if you really do the research, because Brian Callahan is the son of Bill Callahan, for those who don't know. Bill Callahan was the head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers at one point, head coach of the Raiders, longtime NFL head coach, and he's his son. And he's been the offensive coordinator and play caller for the Cincinnati Bengals since 2019. He's done a really good job. Actually, I think that the job he did with Jake Browning really started to pique the interest of NFL teams when Jake Browning was able to have some really impressive performances as the backup to Joe Burrow. The offense was already really good with Joe Burrow, but people weren't sure if it was just Joe Burrow playing at a really high level or if it was the scheme and the concepts that also were contributing, how much they were contributing to Joe Burrow's success. Well, pretty clear that the schemes and the concepts were definitely a big contributing factor to Joe Burrow's success when you look at Jake Browning, him coming in and what he was able to do. So Brian Callahan ends up getting the head coaching job, or is reportedly expects to get the head coaching job with the Tennessee Titans. And, the one thing I think that's really interesting about the NFL, the NFL, I don't even know if they like this or not, or if they want to talk about the NFL's got a nepotism. I don't know if it's a problem, but there is a nepotism issue in the NFL because a lot of jobs are vacancies are pretty much, I would say, taken by guys who have 2 to 3 degrees separation from a former head coach or a family member head coach. This is from 2 years ago. This is from 2 years ago, so it's not totally current. I'm actually going to do the research to get this thing current coming up maybe this off season once they get done with the coaching carousel. So if you go look at 2 years ago, I found that 9 of the 32 head coaches were either sons or fathers of current or former NFL coaches, coordinators, or position coaches. That same research, I also found that 63, at the time I said this is a little old, 2 years old, 63 total NFL coaches, including coordinators and position coaches, are biologically related through marriage to another coach. 53 of the 63 related coaches. So they ended up basically. You go look at a lot of the NFL. You're talking about. I mean, out of the, and I went and looked at, this is for 2021. So, like I said, a couple of years ago. 111 NFL coaches are related biologically or through marriage to current or former NFL coaches. So 111. That's, like I said, a couple of years ago. I'll try to get this updated as soon as I can. But out of the total 792 coaches that were employed by the NFL, 111 of them, as of March of 2021, were related biologically to or related through marriage to former or current NFL coaches. That's a big number. That's close to 15%. That's like a little under 15%. And if you go take into assistant coaches and you take those into account too, the NFL's official coach count, I think, is around 822. If you look at all the total coaches, but I mean, I don't have to really go into the detail of them, but man, you guys can probably think off the top of your head a number of coaches who are, oh man, that guy's related to this guy, or oh yeah, that's the son of this coach, or the father of this coach. The league averages 3.4 coaches per team who are related to a current or a former NFL coach. And if you go look at it, 11 of the 32 head coaches are related to a current or a former NFL head coach. And there are 24 coordinators who are related to a current or a former coach, almost a quarter of them. So the NFL in a nutshell, it's hard to get into the coaching game because it is a good old boys network, but you got to have a family member in it. That's a really good way. That's pretty much half the coaching game is, do you have a family member? Do you know somebody in the coaching game that you're related to that can make the phone call for you in the NFL? College isn't like this. This is why more, I think, of the young coaches are going to college to start their coaching careers, and then they can go back. They can go to NFL because they make the connections they need in college. But the NFL, it's a closed system, and to get into it, you need somebody to vouch for you. It's like the mafia. You need somebody to vouch for you.
And I would say that's prevalent in a lot of industries. By the way, I don't know if you saw that on the NBC game on Sunday. You had Chris Collinsworth in the booth and Jack Collinsworth on the sideline.
Exactly.
He's like 20 something. He's good, but is he better than everybody? You think Chris Collinsworth made a phone call when his kid was coming out of Notre Dame?
Yeah.
I would guess probably.
Yeah.
Probably didn't hurt that Jack Collinsworth had a dad named Chris. Who, but again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
I'm not either. I'm just pointing out. I point out trends and patterns, and I don't think people talk about that trend and pattern enough in the NFL. That basically, talk about a quarter to a third of all the coaches.
Well, and a lot of them have been successful because they grow up in the game.
Right? Oh yeah, no, they know. There's a reason that Shano is as good as he is. Sean McVay too. Sean McVay's his grandfather.
Yeah, he's a third generation
guy. Yeah, so I'm saying there's a reason they're good. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not criticizing their effectiveness as a coach.
Sure, 100%.
Yeah, I'm not even criticizing their coaching acumen. No, actually, I would argue that, just like he said, it helps when you grow up in it and you're immersed in it and ensconced in coaching. When Shano's on the sideline of the Super Bowl, when his dad is coaching the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl, and he's in the locker room, that of course that helps you. I mean, you generations of experience in coaching, you can't quantify or put a price on that. But like I said, I'm just pointing out the pattern. It's a clear trend in the NFL that if you are related to a coach that's coached in the league, that gives you an upper hand.
Well, gosh,
at getting that coaching job.
Sean McVay has been the youngest head coach in the league for the last 5 years, and he was again this year up until the Patriots hired Gerard Mayo. He had been the youngest coach in the league. He hadn't won a Super Bowl. So, obviously, Kyle Shanahan's been a young head coach. It does help. And here's Brian Callahan, and I'm assuming he's the son of Bill Callahan.
Yes. He's the son of Bill Callahan. That's kind of what sparked. And I was like, I did some research about that not too long ago.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. Good stuff right there. Rod's rant, and good to know somebody. That's a key. And I would say this. I tell my kids this all the time. If you like. If you know somebody, don't. All somebody can do typically for you is open a door, right, and get you the meeting, get you the initial conversation. You got to take it from there, but don't ignore the opportunity. It's what you know and it's who you know.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Well, I still think you have to.
You
got
got
to
know some.
You
You
gotta
gotta
know a
prove
little
yourself. But you know, a lot of times getting that door open, or cracked open, or that initial conversation can go a long way, because it's not always easy to get that first conversation in any industry that you want to get into. So, man, that's good stuff right there. That's a big number, by the way.
It's a big number.
It's a big
Overall,
number in the NFL.
The league averages 3.4 coaches per team who are related to a current or a former NFL coach.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. So Rod's rant. We'll have another one coming up. Also behind the burnt orange curtain. You got any other NFL thoughts?
No, I mean, one of the things I also want to get into, I don't think people are giving enough props to Lamar Jackson overall. I got some numbers that I'll share in the next rant about Lamar Jackson and how great he's been. He's basically this season on his way to being the greatest dual threat quarterback in the history of the NFL. I think Steve Young is the greatest dual threat quarterback of all time. Steve Young's got two MVPs, got a Super Bowl ring as a starter.
In the Hall of Fame, of course.
In the Hall of Fame. That's what Lamar Jackson's missing. If Lamar Jackson wins the second MVP, he's going in the Hall of Fame. But he's got a Super Bowl ring as a starting quarterback in the NFL to really change the narrative about him as a quarterback. And I think this season is the best shot he's had at getting that Super Bowl ring. If he gets it, his stats will ultimately put him past Steve Young as the greatest dual threat quarterback of all time. There's no doubt. Honestly, nobody's going to be even close to him when he wins the MVP and if he wins the Super Bowl. He'll be the greatest dual threat quarterback of all time. That's my hypothesis, but I'll prove it because I got the numbers to back it up, and we'll get into that in Rod's next rant of the day. We'll get into that.
Well, I mean, and it's last year we were talking about Patrick Mahomes, right? Patrick Mahomes is off to the greatest start to a career of any player in a North American sports history, right? I mean, that is 6 straight. As a starting quarterback, he's made the AFC Championship game at least in every year that he started as a quarterback. 6 in a row, and he's made it to. He's trying to get to another Super Bowl, and he's only 27 years old or 28 years old. It's crazy, right? What he's done already. Lamar Jackson's in a similar realm if he can get to the Super Bowl and win that Super Bowl this year with this Ravens team. I mean, Roddy won the Heisman Trophy, the Maxwell Award, the Walter Camp Award in college. He's got 2 MVPs now by 27 in the NFL. And as you were saying, what he needs is that. I mean, how would you argue who has a better resume as the dual threat quarterback if he can get to the Super Bowl this year and potentially win the Super Bowl with this Ravens team?
Yeah, he would have accomplished everything Steve Young did and more if he wins the Super Bowl. He'll win the MVP this year. I don't think that's even.
Well, that would be. I mean, to win the Heisman, 2 MVPs, and then if he wins a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah,
would be huge. Because, look, last year Patrick Mahomes, I have argued, and I don't think that he did something that's never been done before. You could argue his season last year was the greatest quarterback season of all time because he led the NFL in passing yards and touchdowns in the regular season and won the MVP, and then won the Super Bowl and the MVP. All those things have never been done in one season. So quarterbacks have done all of those things over the course of their career,
but not
in 1 year.
Yeah.
To lead the regular season NFL in passing yards and touchdowns and then take your team to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl MVP in one season, that's never been done.
Yeah.
So last year, I said it 100 times, but appreciate that. That's never been done before. To your point, that if Lamar Jackson leads this Ravens team past Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes on Sunday and into that Super Bowl, and if they win it with this completely loaded Ravens team, I mean, 2 MVPs, a Super Bowl, and a Heisman Trophy, and all those awards in college. That's pretty.
Yeah,
that's incredible. That's impressive. And he's only 27 years old.
And he's young too. Yep, and negotiate his own contract.
Yeah, only 27.
Negotiate his own contract too. We got to throw that in there as well. But yeah, I'll make that claim, and I think it's a claim that really it's substantive. I think it does actually hold water. But he's got to win. He's got to win.
Yeah, no question.
He's got to win this postseason. If he does, he's going to change the narrative and change really the conversation about his legacy in just a few weeks.
Yeah.
Like, it'll shift dramatically.
Well, and it is
all
amazing.
that stuff you just brought up. Well, they'll start reinforcing that over and over again when they're talking about Lamar Jackson and his legacy. Right now, they don't talk about it enough because he hasn't confirmed it in the postseason when it matters most in the playoffs. He's done it in the regular season. Wins in the regular season, done that already. We've seen him do that. Now it's time for him to take his game to the next level and show that in the playoffs, he can be an elite quarterback in the playoffs and uplift the player around him, elevate and separate.
And in this immediate gratification because society, we forget quickly that in March of last year, he penned an open letter to the Baltimore fans saying goodbye.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Baltimore. Like, I'm out of here. I'm not staying. That was only 8 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
8 months ago.
Yep, and no team wanted him.
Nobody wanted him.
Nobody wanted him.
Unbelievable.
Nobody wanted him.
I remember sitting on the radio show talking about this. Like,
Nobody wanted him.
okay, who's not going to give up a first and a third round pick for Lamar Jackson?
Nobody wanted him.
Nobody. And he's going to win a second MVP this year. I, as a Houston Texans fan, and watching that game on wire to wire last week, I want him. He's unbelievable. You can't get the guy off the field. That's impressive. And there are teams out there like the Atlanta Falcons, the Washington Commanders, saying, now who did we take with our first and our third round pick that was so much better than that guy?
Come on, guys.
And they're still looking for quarterbacks.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, man, that's a great point.
Yeah, still always crazy to look back at all the teams that passed on Lamar Jackson. It's there's always these narratives that everybody wants everybody and anybody would take him. Lamar Jackson was available for 2 first. That Carolina, would they rather have Bryce Young or Lamar Jackson right now? Because they gave up, Bryce Young's cheaper by a lot, but I don't know if you'd take him or Lamar Jackson. And I mean, you look at it now, Bill Belichick, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of interest in Bill Belichick except from the Falcons as a coach. Aaron Rodgers last season, there wasn't a lot of interest in trading for him. The Jets were the only team that offered a trade for him, really. So it's just an interesting thing to look at in the NFL that people don't normally want to take a swing and give up a lot for a player. And for you Cowboys fans, that means that you probably are re-signing Dak. Because I doubt they're going to go out and try and get somebody else, and I doubt that anybody's going to come and trade for Dak Prescott either or give them anything what they want, unfortunately, for you guys. That seems to be the case if you're a Dak hater. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hit up the text line, 512-447-3776. Text line, we are asking, what is your best OU joke? If you've got any takes on the Milwaukee Bucks firing their coach or the Terry Rozier trade or Texas taking on Oklahoma tonight in basketball, anything on the NFL and the suspected hirings and suspected firings and all of that, send that stuff in, 512-447-3776. You guys drive the show. We just try to keep it on the rails. Whatever you want to talk about, send it on in. We're getting to your text messages next on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Keeping the party rolling on the text line, 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776 is the text line number. Let's start getting to some of these texts. My man Nate says, I like the Rozier trade, kind of like trading for a prime Lowry. Yeah, no, you are trading for it's definitely an upgrade from Kyle Lowry. That is 100%. I've seen some really good things from him. You see what you're able to pull off if he's able to merge in with that Heat culture. But I'm a fan of the trade. CP53 says, off topic kind of, but watch Blue Chips last night. Just a reminder, that's a great movie. Crazy to watch things through the NIL lens now. Yeah, it's crazy. It's also crazy that they had Shaq and Penny, and that's the reason why Shaq and Penny ended up together in Orlando. That Shaq was like, in Orlando, was like, we don't need C-Web. That you should get this guy Penny. And then they make the trade with the Warriors, and then the Warriors signed that terrible contract with Chris Webber that just puts him in this massive hole because they draft him and trade and do all this stuff to get Chris Webber in. They signed this deal that he can opt out after one season, and he does and goes to Washington, and it just kills them for years. And then they end up with Steph Curry, and they're just fine. So just fun what-ifs in basketball when you look at those kind of things in Blue Chips. Tick says, Rondo was a rookie. He wasn't drawing up plays when they won. I think it was his second year when they won. They won, and I don't know if he was. This was all from. I wouldn't say he probably was his second season either. This was from KG Confidential, I think it is, or KG Certified. The podcast with him and Paul Pierce and Doc Rivers was on it, and he was talking. They were talking about Rondo drawing up plays and leading the huddle and those types of things. I mean, I know Tony Parker has done it. Lots of players do it. My point was more that good coaches allow players to draw up plays too. Was more my point in that we know that Doc Rivers talked that it's not crazy for players to draw up plays and players to want to be involved in that thing and the coaching part of it. And if they feel they know on the court they have something that could work, that was more my point. But I don't know if he was drawing them up in his second year when they won either. But I know he was at one point because that was out of the mouth of Doc Rivers. My favorite go-to OU joke. Why doesn't the state of Texas fall into the Gulf of Mexico? Because OU sucks. I like it. Keep sending those OU jokes. Did you hear the Oklahoma governor's mansion burned down all the way to the axles? Like it. Another one. Don't have a favorite OU joke. Just call them the sideways Wagoneers. Is that because they continue to fall over when they're riding on I don't know if they do that at the basketball game. I think it'd be hilarious if they did, but I don't know if they do that. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll keep going on the text line, 512-447-3776. Reset the show at the top of the hour. We'll also get into some big NFL talk. More and more happening. MLB Hall of Fame is supposed to be announced some point during the next hour or two. We'll try and get that as soon as we see it come down the pike. We'll try and get you that as well. All in the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Hour 2 here on the Sports Complex on the Horn on a Tuesday afternoon. Hope you're doing well with us. 512-447-3776 is the text line. The poll of the day today. What is your favorite Sooner joke? What is your favorite OU joke? It's your favorite Oklahoma joke, whatever you want to put it as. Texas plays Oklahoma tonight at 6 in just about an hour. Texas women's team plays Oklahoma tomorrow, so I thought we'd get in some, just some Sooner fun, some Sooner joke fun we could get in on a Tuesday afternoon. It's not just for football. I thought we'd get into that. To reset a little bit, we did talk earlier about the game today. We can maybe get back into that. If you guys want to talk about that at all, hit us up on the text line. We can talk more about the Texas men's basketball team taking Oklahoma tonight. We also did talk about the NBA, that Adrian Griffin fired after going 30-13 to start his NBA head coaching career at the Milwaukee Bucks. He is out. The presumed leading candidate right now is Doc Rivers, even though they haven't even picked up the phone and called him. By the time that report came out, they want to bring in a more veteran coach. Felt that Adrian Griffin may have been in over his head. That was the belief, at least in Milwaukee. We also got into the Terry Rozier traded to Miami for Kyle Lowry and a protected first-round pick. Charlotte may be not done dealing either as they continue to try and shed some contracts, and get some future picks, a little bit of assets to try and have some room to move around for the Charlotte Hornets. We should be getting the MLB Hall of Fame announcements at some point soon, or the Baseball Hall of Fame announcements at some point soon. I'll keep trying to check to see if I see those come in, and we'll let you know when we see those come in. For Texas, they do get another commitment since our last show. The defensive lineman, 6'4", 305, 3-star from Las Vegas, a senior coming from Arizona, played with Johnny Nansen in Arizona. He is coming over to bolster the defensive line depth for a Texas team that is hurting a little bit with that. Texas gets Teoli Sevilla, I believe, or Sevilla or something of that to that effect. Teoli Sevilla is a commit coming from Arizona, defensive lineman, to help out with there. The defensive line coach for the Texans, though, Jacques Cesaire, not retained, not staying with the Texans after this year, which makes you wonder if that may have something to do why Texas still does not have their defensive line coach. And I know I should have to really enunciate on this. The Texans have not kept their defensive line coach. One of the front runners that everybody assumed and rumors was the front runner for the Texas defensive line position was Rod Wright, the assistant defensive line coach for the Houston Texans. The Texas Longhorns were looking at him, possibly, allegedly, for their defensive line position. But if the Texans were moving on from their D-line coach, is there a possibility they may offer him the job as the full-time D-line coach as opposed to just the assistant? And would he take that job over going back to college and coming to Texas, his alma mater? That may be an issue of why it has not been announced yet. Maybe it is an issue of just they're working on the deal and its final numbers. Maybe they're looking at somebody else in the NFL altogether. All of those are reasonable things to believe for this Texas defensive line coach position. However, you have to assume that the reason that the D-line coach has not been hired at Texas, why they've not brought somebody in, is not for a lack of trying to find somebody, is that person was probably either in the NFL playoffs or still in the NFL playoffs, and so they cannot hire him until after the NFL seasons are done. Maybe he's still waiting to do an exit interview, but that came out today that the Texans are not keeping their defensive line coach, so we will have to see if that has something to do with Texas and Rod Wright, as he is the assistant defensive line coach, and if they would be keeping him on board if they're moving on altogether, and then that opens up for Texas a bit more. Let's keep rolling here. Let's get into a little bit more NFL talk. Actually, you know what? Let's hit the text line a little bit more before we get there because I don't want to leave you guys waiting for too long. Texter says, if you did not hear the poll of the day today, is your favorite OU joke since Texas plays OU tonight? Texter says, how do you know a Sooner invented the toothbrush? If it was anyone else, it would have been called a teeth brush. Yes, I like that one. And my favorite Sooner joke is, how many Sooner fans does it take to equal 32 teeth total, otherwise known as a full set of teeth? Answer, 33 to 35 Sooner fans. There's always some that have no teeth at all. You know, you guys, I think should we get Dr. Eckert to open a branch there in Norman? Would that help them out? if you guys are saying they have such bad teeth, I'm for it. Another great dual threat quarterback, not as dual as Lamar, was Roger Staubach, especially when he first started. Yeah, the game was extremely different then. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, or basically the entire 70s when Staubach played. I believe he played basically 69 to 79, if I'm correct on that one, for Roger Staubach. But yes, no, and a lot more quarterback. It was such a bigger run game. You still had kind of options were still available somewhat at a point in the NFL before the passing game became more and more prolific. And Lamar Jackson became somebody who can effectively run the ball and stay on the field to a point. And he hasn't up until this season. That's been another issue. Another point why people didn't want to give up the first to go get him. But yes, Roger Staubach, another one that you can throw in. Different game though. Different game. What was that? 50 years ago? A different game. 40 years ago, we should say. Giannis may be a diva. Third coach fired in his career and still has one of his bum brothers on the roster. It's still that Giannis, when he came in the other day, comes in, immediately turns the ball over, and then picks up a flagrant foul. Or a flopping foul, sorry. A flopping foul where he turns the ball over and then fouls and then comes back on the other end and then falls over and they call a flopping foul. You're just like, man, you should not be in the NBA. You are in over your head. But yes, I do think his priorities may not be in line with the Milwaukee Bucks long term, which a lot of guys aren't. And the question will be, is he somebody who has to be right and he just constantly wants to change the coach because they're not doing what he wants? Or is he right and he wasn't getting enough out of Mike Budd? And I think the reality is he needs to step up more. If he's continually upset that people are not going out to him and asking him what he wants, then that's on him. You're the star. Go do it. We heard the Jimmy Butler telling Beal what to do. If you're the star in the NBA, Adrian Griffin wasn't going to tell you to shut up. You need to go tell him, hey, man, if I want to see this play, I want to go do that. I think that there may be some issues with him not understanding that everyone's not going to keep reaching over and go, Giannis, what do you think? At every single timeout. And that may be an issue. I'm not in the Milwaukee Bucks locker room, so I can't tell you. We haven't seen enough of it publicly to see him be a problem, but it does seem that this is a third guy, and all signs point to Giannis being unhappy with the coaching. Chan says, keys to victories tonight against OU. I mean, look, the easy keys, Chan, and I can tell you this, and it'll be for pretty much every game, rebound and hit threes. That's your easy answer for the rest of the season. Rebound and hit threes is two things that Texas does not do consistently enough. They don't rebound and hit threes. They do that. Their defense is the paramount of important. Tonight, the defense is going to be important against these guards. Don't let them start shooting threes. They're not a great offensive team, so don't let them become one just because of your lack of effort. And for Dylan Dessou, it's staying out of foul trouble. They get a lot of fouls called against him for OU. They're going to want to come after him, and every team knows that Dylan Dessou is key to pick up one or two of those. And if you can get him on the bench, it really opens things up for you on both ends of the court. So they're going to be trying to get Dylan Dessou in foul trouble. He has to play smart to not get in foul trouble. That's going to be a big piece for Texas. But as far as for OU, they're going to try and play heavy defense on Texas. Those guards are a little bit bigger than Texas guards. So Texas is going to have to be able to get in there and play bully, bump around, do not turn the ball over. But if you go to the paint and they bump you, try and finish the shot, but, don't avoid contact every time. Let them get in foul trouble. Then they have to back off you and you can go do what you want to do. But don't allow them to push you around and then you pick up fouls because you're trying to fight back. That's a bad way to play basketball. Texter says, how do you hit on a woman from Oklahoma? Nice tooth. Another teeth one. Man, yeah, we get Dr. Ecker up there. I'll tell you. If a Sooner divorces his wife, are they still cousins? Yeah. Another good Sooner one there. Does anybody even know what a Sooner is? Can someone explain that to me? I don't think it's a thing. I think they made it up, and they're too embarrassed to change it. As a Texas Tech fan, I know I should want UT to win tonight because it makes Texas Tech look better. That's hard to do, though, but I guess it's a win-win for Tech fans. Look, Texas Tech is good this year. Y'all guys are doing really well this year. I know Texas fans were so upset that Tech beat Texas. That Tech is playing really good basketball. The question is, can it withstand for the entire season? That Pop Isaac stuff, you still have to worry about a little bit to see if there's going to be any punishment that comes down later in the season. But, the question is, can you maintain that level of play for entire season and into the playoffs? That's been an issue for Texas Tech in recent years that has kind of tallied off sometimes in the end of the season. But, I like the job they've done there. They're playing tough basketball, and that's what you got to do when you're a school like Texas Tech. Little NFL news to get to. The Titans have hired their coach, Brian Callahan. When all these big names are circulating around and people are looking and, there's a lot of, there's names like Bobby Slowick now that are hot names, or Ben Johnson from the Lions, offensive coordinators that you may go for. The Titans decide to go for Brian Callahan, who's the offensive coordinator of the Bengals, which it was a hotter name a year ago. But again, and we know what Rob Babers was talking about earlier when we played that clip, the nepotism. He is Bill Callahan's son. He's 39 years old. He's been the Bengals OC since 2019. I think really the whole fact of what he did with Jake Browning, that being able to win and play well with a lesser quarterback is what Tennessee wants. This seems like a real Tennessee move. It's a move of hiring somebody that has a name, and I don't know how much this is the new general manager and president, and more this feels like a Tennessee Titans move. Of just kind of an old school move to hire a guy that's got the name in there, that made a quarterback who wasn't great play well. Those types of things. I'm not against the hiring of Brian Callahan, but it is a bit surprising that was the first domino you'd see fall for the Titans. I figured they'd be able to get maybe somebody better, but maybe a lot of people were not as thrilled going to Tennessee. Going into a division now with the Texans where they're looking good. And Jacksonville could get over that hump and start playing better at any point. Indianapolis got Anthony Richardson now coming back. He'll be healthier next season. They may be, maybe a lot of coaches were not as thrilled. And I'm sure after firing a Mike Vrabel, who won a Coach of the Year a couple of years ago, that they may think, I don't necessarily want to go here. So they go with the 39-year-old Brian Callahan in Tennessee. The Panthers have hired Dan Morgan as the general manager. He was a Panthers player from 01 to 07. He has been actually working in the executive side since 2010. He started as a scouting intern. Has worked his way up. He's been with the Panthers since 2021. But the Panthers keeping it in-house to hire their general manager. Not sure is the best, but it is a football guy. So bringing a football guy to talk football, I prefer that to some people that it gets too far into the suits. And when you have an owner like David Tepper who constantly wants to get involved in things, you may need to bring in some more football guys. So I'm not opposed to that, of hiring Dan Morgan. There's a giant rebuild that needs to be done there in Carolina. So he will be in charge of that. The Bears hire Shane Waldron as their offensive coordinator. He comes from the Seahawks. He's been there since 21. He coached there. He came over from the Sean McVay offense. He was working in L.A. with the Rams since 2017, came over with Sean McVay from Washington. He goes over. That Cliff Kingsbury talk, that is now done in Chicago. This doesn't tell you fully if they're going to keep Fields or if they're going on to Caleb Williams. This move doesn't necessarily shadow it too much. You could believe that he was a guy that Russell Wilson was a fan of working with. He's done well with Geno Smith, yet another offensive coordinator where people are more impressed. It's not what can you do with a really good quarterback? It's what can you do with a quarterback that people maybe thought was done and you brought him back and showed what he could do. Could show you that, you rejuvenated Geno Smith's career. Maybe you can go over and rejuvenate Justin Fields, get him to that next step up, get his accuracy a little bit better, get him to play a better game, and we can trade that number one back and really build up our team. Because if Justin Fields can play the quarterback position, then we figured that out, and now we have the pieces because of the first-round pick trade back we can do. We got I believe they're the number 9 pick too, but they pick up Shane Waldron from Seattle. Seattle now looking to fill more positions as Waldron decides to walk away there and take the offensive coordinator job at the Bears. I don't know if they were keeping him or not after this season either, but he has moved on. The Eagles are firing a bunch of guys. They just fired Brian Johnson, their offensive coordinator. They'd already fired Sean Desai, their defensive coordinator. They've also said they're not re-signing Matt Patricia. You could have seen that from 200 miles away. He came in at the end of the season and didn't really do anything. This does feel like Nick Sirianni's last call, unless he's able to find some really, really good OCs. It does feel like the culture in Philadelphia is taking a huge hit when you start to have that problem of, well, the offensive and defensive coordinator leaves, so you have to rebuild a lot of that culture because you're losing some major pieces of your coaching staff. You bring in 2 more, and they're already gone after a year, and you replace one of them inside. It's hard to then really firm hand come back into all these players and get them to believe and to buy in, and the buy-in is so important in football. So we'll see if that ends up biting the Eagles in the butt. I know Cowboys fans do not mind if the Eagles are going to have some issues, but that is a big story in Philadelphia, is that the Eagles letting go now offensive and defensive coordinators 2 years in a row, replacing both coordinator positions there in Philadelphia. The Raiders are hiring their GM now. They are bringing over the Chargers GM, who was just fired at the end of the season, Tom Telesco. For those wondering why you would hire a guy who just got fired, he was part of the massive rebuild that if he hired Brandon Staley, that may be your issue. But I think they're trying to bring in some experience to go with Antonio Pierce. It's not a terrible hire. He has a decent record as a drafter. He's drafted Jason Verrett, Melvin Gordon, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Justin Herbert, and Rashawn Slater, all there in the first round. Quentin Johnson is who he drafted this year. I don't know how much they need him there. He also drafted Mike Williams, who's a pretty good wide receiver. He's drafted pretty well in the first round. He's not, he's stuck around. I think he built a decent roster in LA. It may be some of the more football operations. You need to bring in some other people around him. Raiders fans not happy about it at all, but that's not hugely surprising. But he is a name that has had a lot of experience. He was with the Colts since 98 to 2002. And they are 2012, and then he ended up with the Chargers for the last 10 seasons. So a lot of experience coming over from LA to the Raiders, staying in Division II, knows a lot of those players, knows how to game plan, those types of things for the Raiders, bringing in their new general manager, keeping Antonio Pierce as coach as well. All reports the Chargers are pretty close to hiring Jim Harbaugh, starting to work out details, starting to look into who he would need to bring in as coach. And I think that's really where the money lies is, Harbaugh is going to get paid. The question is, how much do his assistants need to get paid and his coordinators? And then how much, are you paying for new facilities or whatever else and new staff to do the kind of things he wants to do on his team? That's where you have to start really going into with them and saying, all right, well, we're giving you, $10 million a season. And then are we spending another 15 to 20 a season on these other people? That's where the money starts to rack up for the Chargers, who have notoriously not been the most spendy organization in the world, especially with staff. But a huge hiring that would open up their window for a Super Bowl and, really get him to a place where I don't think, if you talk about how bad Brandon Staley was as a head coach, to flip that to Jim Harbaugh, it would be a big culture change, but a good change for the Chargers. And one more note we'll throw out before we take a break. Stroud and Anderson get the Pro Football Writers Rookies of the Year, offensive and defensive. Stroud wins it overall, wins offensive, and then Will Anderson wins it for the defensive. So some wins for the Texans rookies. When people were so worried about that draft, you know what? You got to say Caserio did well in that draft as well. He did well. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get back to the text line, 512-447-3776. Anything else you guys want to talk about, NFL, NBA, college basketball, and your best Sooner jokes, send them all in on the text line, 512-447-3776 is the text line number. We'll be right back. We'll hit that up here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn on a Tuesday afternoon. Haven't seen those the Hall of Fame people come through yet. I'll keep looking to see if I see those come through. I do see one. Todd Helton is going to be going into the Hall of Fame. Adrian Beltre heading into the Hall of Fame as well. Joe Mauer looks like he is going into the Hall of Fame in this break. I do not see a Billy Wagner. I do not know if he made it in or not. We'll have to see the complete list. But what I see, it does look like Adrian Beltre is making it in. We are playing music all week long because it is National Blood Donor Month, Blood Donor Appreciation Month, or Blood Donor Month, but celebrating everybody out there who gives and donates blood, a great cause that if you can go out there and donate your blood. So we're playing some blood songs all week long here on the Sports Complex. Asking you on the text line to send in your favorite OU jokes as Texas takes on OU here in just a few minutes, and as well as anything else you guys want to talk about on the show. We get Texas fans says after last year, this season has already been amazing. That's the right attitude, but I know you're gonna get greedy later in the season, so you gotta keep going forward. You gotta keep going forward. The text says the Sooners got their name because of the land grant days where people got there too soon and cheated. I've always heard this, and it still doesn't make sense to me that they celebrate that they're just like, yep, we cheated to win. I guess, it kind of goes with being American, but it's the same point. I've always heard that. That's the only explanation I've ever heard about the term Sooners, but I would not name my college after that. That's just me, or my university, sorry. Texter says, my favorite joke was you can't spell OU. You can't spell suck without OU. OU. I get it. Chan, what do you got here? Need to play Johnson again tonight, get him some experience, also help out with the defense. I'd like to see Chris Johnson play more, get him some road experience. This is going to be another tough matchup to get him in against a number 11 team. You'd like to see him, when you're able to get a lead and have him go out there a little bit more in those moments. But I do want to see Chris Johnson play. Kendall Weaver is going to be another one where, I don't know how much the guard offense is going to be a big play for Oklahoma. Their defense is really, really good. So I don't know how much you can bring in guys that are not offensively leaning in this game. You may have to stick with guys who can score a little bit more and won't turn the ball over, which may lead to less play for Chris Johnson. But I do want to see him get in the game at least a little bit of run. You're going to see some, for Kendall Weaver, it's another one that anyone they can cheat off of. Really good defensive teams will kill you if you have guys you can cheat off of. So Dylan Mitchell, it's going to be big on him to not let them just cheat off of him and not get paid back for it when they're not going to guard him on the three-point line. Can he drive the bucket and still get points? Are they able to, can Dylan DeSue keep them honest and keep them on the floor? Caden Shedrick, those guys who maybe sometimes disappear. IT Horton, if he hits threes tonight, man, that would be huge. I do want to see Chris Johnson, though, Chan. I want to see him keep getting playing time because you want to start getting him more ready. As we saw earlier with Kansas last night, that Johnny Furphy. And now he's, he was supposed to be better, and he's 6'9". There's some other things about him that make you say, well, he can probably get in and give us some minutes. But you don't expect him to be leading the team in scoring on a game necessarily this early in the season. You expect maybe in the tournament if they really turn it out at that level. But you want to see Chris Johnson get some more time just to add a little bit more depth to this team. And, you don't have that front court depth. It's just not going to come. I know Onyema may get some more minutes in this game as well. He didn't really play against Baylor. But I think you're going to see more guard play than big play tonight, too, just to try and get it to play to your strengths and not necessarily play to the other team's weaknesses. You have to try and play to your strengths. I do want to play some sound behind the burnt orange curtain. Rob Babers went behind it. He does it every day. Some good stuff from Rob Babers from this morning on a Hook 'em Up replay here on the Sports Complex.
the portal additions, the 8 portal additions that they've made, and they may not be done in that portal, plus the returning players, and especially quarterback and offensive line.
Good stuff there from Hook 'em Up with E and Rod B. All right, we're going to take our last break. We'll come back, hit up the text line one more time. 512-447-3776 is your text line. Any more OU jokes you want to throw at us? Any other questions or comments or anything you want to talk about? NFL, MLB, NBA. We'll mention the MLB Hall of Famers for you one more time. Who got in and who got out and how many votes were they out by? We'll mention that when we come back and wrap up the show here on the Sports Complex and the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. All right, wrapping things up here on a Tuesday afternoon. Did get the news that comes down that Ryan Williams, the 5-star wide receiver that Texas was in the running for, has canceled his visit to Texas. Probably not a great sign, but I believe, and we'll get more into tomorrow. We'll probably have more information on it tomorrow. Could believe that with a lot of the signings and, transfers and everything happening, he could want more playing time early, and Texas could not do that for him. We'll see what ends up with Ryan Williams, but that is, not the best news. WPAI Parts Guy says, I don't have a clue who, but do you think Sark missed on securing our defensive line coach is now picking second tier? I don't know if that's the case. If it's another week, it may be, but I believe it would still be someone in the NFL, and it may be someone really good in the NFL. We just don't know yet. We will have to wait and see on that one. Joe Mauer, Todd Helton, and Adrian Beltre, third baseman for the Rangers for a long time, all in the Hall of Fame. Billy Wagner, 9th year on the ballot, missed it by 5 votes. Last year will be his last year on the ballot. Hopefully they'll get him in. We'll cover it more and more tomorrow, and the Texas OU recap tomorrow. But until then, be kind, be safe, keep your underwear clean, and we'll see you right back here on the Sports Complex.